Marty Ranson was the dork of Doddsville High.
You get undressed in there.
His classmates laughed at him.
Are you ready?
Here's Marty.
Where's the bin?
They tormented him.
Where's the bin?
And then they went too far. Now, 5 years later, Marty's throwing a little party.
Lights on.
A class reunion.
Come on, you guys, let's party.
They say he still roams the nut house, ever hopeful of that chance to escape, so he can take his evil revenge out on us all.
And he's making sure everyone has the time of their life.
I feel sick!
He's created a romantic atmosphere for rekindling old flames. And a nice place to just hang around. Marty hasn't forgotten a thing. He's giving them a blast from the past they'll never forget. Marty Ranson is still a dork, but tonight he's getting even. Vestron Pictures presents Slaughter High.
Hey guys, this is Brandon Ford and welcome to another remixed edition of the Blind Rage podcast. This time around, it is a commentary for 1986's cult classic Slaughter High, which was originally posted on November 2nd, I think that's right, November 2nd, 2020. And much like the previous two that I've posted, I've gone ahead and remixed the commentary and the movie audio tracks. Hopefully everything sounds a little bit better than it did when I posted it on the podcasting platforms. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but I would like to encourage you guys first to please follow me on Instagram at writer Brandon Ford. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your comments below. Please check out my most recent novel, Drowning in Oceans of Black, which is available in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook format. You can find a 12-minute sample of the audiobook read by Michael Butler right here on the Blind Rage Podcast YouTube channel. You could also find several of my other titles in various formats on Amazon, on Audible. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, suggestions, recommendations, feel free to email me directly at blindragepod81@gmail.com. Oh, and please don't forget to visit the Blind Rage Podcast Facebook page. And while you're there, like and subscribe. Alright, so if you're going to watch along, we're going to get into Slaughter High with a 3 count. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, play. Something is going to go wrong during the course of this recording. I know it. I can feel it. Why? Because everything has gone wrong in the moments leading up to this recording. That's right, yeah. And it wasn't Slaughter High that I was originally planning on doing a commentary for. Oh no. There were 2 or 3 other movies that I wanted to do commentaries for, but I couldn't for various reasons. Then when I finally decided on Slaughter High, still more things kept going wrong. I couldn't find this wire. The headphones were getting tangled. Couldn't get the iPod to... I almost started playing the wrong movie. If things went smoothly, I'd be concerned. But anyway, this is Slaughter High. 1986. Actually shot in 1984. This is a movie I've been a long time fan of, as bad as it is. I did find it interesting though that it was shot in 84, released in November of 86, and this is a movie that is centered around April Fool's Day. Could you pick a release date that is any further away from April Fool's Day? Why don't you just release it on Christmas? And there's Simon Scudamore, R.I.P. This is a deeply, deeply flawed movie, and I don't think many people would argue with me about that. Like I said, I do love it. I'm a longtime fan of it, but there are a lot of issues with it, and since it had come out on DVD, under the first it came out on DVD in the UK, with commentary tracks, the director and the writer or the producer or whoever it was, they addressed every fucking thing that I would have spoken about in my own commentary, or everything that I'd thought about over the years that I'd checked off as, okay, this doesn't make sense. No, this isn't right. And I know that you can look at it as the whole thing's a dream, so nothing makes sense. But no, that doesn't work with me. Caroline Munro, who seems like an incredibly, incredibly sweet person in her commentary and her interviews on the disc, on the Blu-ray. She was very, very nice. She doesn't do an American accent very well, which she freely admits. I don't think anybody really does. This is an English movie that was made for the American slasher market. I don't think it fared well. I don't think it was successful in that respect. And you know, by the way, too, one of the main issues that I had with this movie for many years was its similarity to the 70s movie Class Reunion Massacre, aka The Redeemer, which I haven't seen for so long and don't remember at all, and I don't even remember why it is so similar. But they talk about it in the commentary that's on the disc, and I think the director, I'm pretty sure both the director and the producer, whoever it was, who worked on this film, claimed to have never seen it, which I can believe because this is a very simple premise. I mean, there isn't really anything all that specific about it. I mean, there have been a million movies that have come and gone since with the same general premise, you know, with the teenager being wronged who reunites his tormentors for a revenge sequence. You know, it's not terribly original. However, I do believe that there is a jester mask in Class Reunion Massacre. I could totally be wrong, but that's what I remember vaguely. And I do remember the movie being very strange and avant-garde and 70s. And this is very much a movie of the slasher boom of the 80s. So it has a totally different look and feel to it. That's even sad, or sad. Or, I'm gonna try to do that again. The suicide of Simon Scudamore was terribly sad and tragic, and especially the way Caroline speaks of him in the commentary or her interview, that she had no idea he harbored these dark feelings, and he seemed like such a good person. And she said that, I believe she said that he'd had some trouble in the past with substance abuse, I believe, and he had was he, or did he do jail time, or I don't know, but I believe it was part of his probationary period, or it was either that or he was just a good person. He worked with children on the weekends to musically. I don't know if she said, but she said that he seemed like a very kind-hearted person, and that she never would have guessed. There's so many echoes of Carrie. Every one of these movies, I've so often said this, that I've said this so often, that Carrie set the template for innumerable horror and slasher films and thrillers and books. And without Carrie, the horror genre as a whole would be incredibly different, because it, like I said, it set a template. The movie more so than the book, because the book is a bit different than the movie. But the movie, the movie is very much like the I'm trying to think of something classy to compare it to, but anyway, it's like, I just keep thinking of the the line in part 2, that yeah, for those of you who have forgotten, and I know that there are many of you, there is a sequel, and it's quite good, and you should check it out. It's directed by the director of Poison Ivy. Debut episode. Pluggity plug. I gotta lower this a little bit, because the coaches. By the way, he says Joker. Joker, Jester, are they the same thing? I would say that they're the same thing. But The Final Girl, a book that I wrote that is an homage to slasher films, to a number of slasher films, the killer wears a jester mask. And that was a total, well, you could say knockoff, but it was meant to be an homage to Slaughter High, the jester mask. This is this scene here with the accident that leads to the disfigurement is has some echoes of Trauma for me. It's like very Nukem High-ish. That's what it always brings me to when I watch it. Especially the acting. And the way the one actor says, "Just wait till he tries that dope." It's so bad, and it's so Trauma. Here it comes. Wait, you say it? No, I guess I missed it.
Just wait until he tries that dope.
Oh, there it is. And the look on his face, it's just bad acting 101.
Keep your butts down, your back straight. Let's see some movement. Come on.
So, this was not a movie that I grew up on because it was not readily available at my mom and pop video store during the time I was very into the genre and would have very much liked to have rented it. They did have it before, but like I mentioned in some previous commentaries about that mom and pop video store, they had a number of really, really good horror and slasher movies that were either stolen or broken or never returned, and they didn't bother to replace them. So I missed out on a lot of stuff that I didn't see until later when the internet made things a little more accessible. But I didn't see it until around the mid to late 90s, and I saw it on Monster Vision, TNT, with Joe Bob Briggs. That was the first time I saw it, and I really, really liked it. And I specifically remember that the network version, this was before the DVD or anything like that. I don't even think DVDs were out at the time. But I do specifically remember that the network version that I saw at that time looked better. I eventually saw the Vestron VHS edition, and it was way too dark. And there were scenes, especially the scene where they're trying to escape in Caroline Monroe's car, that you can't really tell what the hell's going on. And I didn't have that issue when I saw it on Monster Vision. I don't think I recorded it. No, did I? Maybe I did. I don't remember. This was so long ago. But yeah, then as I said about what other movie it was, I was talking about TV edits of movies that I grew up on and watched over and over again. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that I didn't know was in it until I saw the Vestron VHS. Didn't know that there was full frontal nudity, male nudity. Among other things. Of course, the belly explosion was heavily trimmed, and it's the one scene that everybody always talks about when they talk about this movie. I don't know. It's not really a standout moment for me because it looks so fake, and the navel looks so fake. A lot of people, a lot of fans of the film think it looks pretty authentic and think it's pretty ghastly, and I do recall hearing stories of people who had seen the film and were basically traumatized by that scene and had to turn it off after the fact. Me, not so much. One thing that I always had an issue with, one of my many issues with this movie is, and I don't think that it was mentioned in the commentary or one of the commentaries, because I think the director did 2 of them. I'm pretty sure they're different, but they talk about the same things. Pretty sure the Blu-ray is different than the one in the the UK DVD edition. But anyway, one of the main issues I had was that this was when the reunions scene begins. It's a 5-year class reunion, and I've never heard of a 5-year class reunion. That made no sense. But then you can, people say, oh, well, you can discredit all of the inaccuracies and inconsistencies because it's all a dream. Well, no, you can't. And I often wondered if the whole zombie scene at the end of the movie, which is completely out of place, was a reference to or was inspired by Maniac. It's obviously very similar, and Maniac has Caroline Monroe. So I always wondered that. I don't know if it was mentioned. But yeah, I don't believe they talk about it being a 5-year reunion in the commentary. I believe they say 10 years, and I just looked at the Wikipedia just in case, that because generally the Wikipedia pages are so specific with the plot, and they give every single element down to the smallest detail. Pretty much, it's like reading a novelization of the movie, but this one was glossed over. A lot of stuff was glossed over, really, and it says it's a 10-year reunion in the plot. Oh, what a scream! It says it's a 10-year reunion in the plot summary that's listed on Wikipedia, and that is incorrect. It's 5 years. Watch me be totally wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. Because I'd been harboring this feeling for so many years. Because...
We didn't mean to.
Oh. The apartment that she wakes up in is so chintzy. And that, that doesn't make sense as well, because if it's meant to be Marty's dream, why are we showing, is her name Carol? Carol. Why are we showing Carol wake up from her own nightmare? So, in Marty's nightmare, in Marty's nightmare, Carol's having her own nightmare about what happened? No. That doesn't make sense.
Tell me why the hell not? What about my percentage?
Look, Manny. The guy's weird, the story's weird, and
What?
and you're weird.
Listen
And
to
you're
me.
weird.
You take your clothes off for the photographers every day of the week. What's the difference?
The difference is that guy should be locked up.
He has been. Now listen, it's a
He
big
has
break
been.
for you.
Break. Do me a favor. Don't give me any more breaks like this one.
Hey, baby. Be nice to me.
Yeah, and
Pretty wild.
my issues were a lot of the same that other people had.
I was talking to the dog, Manny. I'm not doing
Like the
that
bathtub, like where the hell would you find a bathtub in high school? And it was explained away by the director. I don't remember exactly what the explanation was, but had something to do with
That's final.
high schools in the UK.
Why, you ungrateful.
That it's not so uncommon to find a bathtub in a school in the UK. Apparently. My high school didn't even have showers. At least not when I went there. like we're about to get our first fake out scare here. I don't remember, is the roommate jangling those bells so that you think it's Marty, or is it just part of the score? Ah.
You almost frightened me to death. Where have you been all night? With Ricky. Yeah? I was worried about you. Guess what? What? We're engaged. Oh, wow. Oh,
I remember in Caroline's commentary, she had a lot of very sweet things to say about this actress.
Damn, I forgot all about it. But hey, listen, they're only in town for a couple of hours. I'll get away early.
we'll see.
No, I'll make it. Whatever. Maybe a
Wait.
little late, but I'll make it. Okay?
Okay. It should be fun. Besides, what have we got to lose?
I was trying to hear if they mentioned the length of time that supposedly passed. And, you know, if it is 5 years, and I'm almost 100% positive it is, the characters grew up pretty fast. They live very much like adults. Careers and all that shit. And even 10 years would be because people are still struggling. People are still struggling in their late 20s. People are like living in starter apartments, you know. Most people, anyway. Most American people. Or they're still going to school if they want to get their masters. Another thing that I had a big problem with, which I don't remember if this was mentioned in the commentary, but so even though this is a dream, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that it's not a dream. Let's just say that this is all actually happening, and this is the real plot of the movie. So if Marty lures everybody back to the school, back to the scene of the crime, why didn't he at least leave the door open for them? Why did he make it so they had to break in? There didn't seem to be a lot of thought put behind the story, and she had to walk all the way from the 7-Eleven. I wonder if they even have 7-Elevens in the UK.
Don't you worry. Old Skip and his faithful warhorse will get you there without a hitch.
I don't remember. Caroline pointed out who was American and who was English during her commentary, and I believe, well, obviously that there were more English actors, but I don't think there were that many Americans. I think he's American. What the fuck's his name? Skip or whatever.
I guess the rubber band finally broke.
He sounds American.
Fuck you, asshole.
Why don't you get this heap of shit off the room?
Joey!
Great skiing, man.
How you doing,
Yeah.
Joe? Put it there, pal. Ow! Ow! Yes, Stella! So you finally went and made an honest woman of her, huh, Bone Crusher?
Yeah, you gotta call me Mrs. Bone Crusher these days. Was that Carol?
Who else?
I love how Carol just whizzes by, and you know she sees them, you know she recognizes them, but she doesn't stop and be like, "Hey, you guys, you need help? You need help? Should I call a tow? Do you need a lift?" Why don't we all pile in my very expensive, what was it, BMW? And where the fuck is my water? Yeah, this is going to be the first thing that goes wrong during the recording of this commentary. Yeah, so when they get there, I mean, it's pretty obvious that nothing is going on. Everything is dark. If this were this, I didn't even, I wasn't invited. I don't even know if my high school had a 10 or 20 year, but last year was my 20 year, and I didn't receive anything. My guess is that they're contacting, that schools are contacting a lot of the alum through Facebook, because you can have the school where you graduated from, or LinkedIn, which I'm not on, but I'm not on Facebook under my real name, so.
For Christ's sakes, Frank.
And I didn't put my high school.
Oh man, that bike has got to go.
And that was all purposeful because I don't want to be found. I have absolutely no interest in revisiting my high school class.
Who's got the beers?
Same old Frankie. Where the hell is everybody?
And I wonder how many hours they were sitting there.
Joke? Hey, don't look at me. I don't know who sent out.
When Carol says, let's go back into town and swap a few stories, you can really hear her accent bleed.
We go back to town and swap a few stories.
There you go.
Hey, man.
Swap a few stories.
I'm going inside. Who's coming with me?
Yeah, I will.
Joe, I am freezing my butt off.
Come on, Joe. We'll go around the back way. We'll find a way in.
They're going around the back. I mean,
Careful.
shit.
It'll be
With all of this, with everything like boarded up and no sign of anyone, no lights, no crepe paper, no streamers, no fucking balloons. I mean, it's pretty evident that there's no party or there's no reunion. There's nothing. Yet they go around the back to break in. Why? I don't. Was it that necessary for them to revisit their old haunts just to see how the school has decayed over the course of the past 5 years?
girls. Some extra beer left.
Do me a favor, Ted. I'm gonna go back to town and call Susan. I'll join you, darling.
Sounds like they got in.
There are certain areas of the building, I believe they said this was a children's boarding school that they filmed at, but there are certain areas of this building that look like a house to me. They don't look anything like a school. And I'm not just talking about the room that has a bathtub in it, but there's a hallway that during the scene where they meet the caretaker, to me it's just too narrow to be the hallowed halls of a high school or even a children's school. I think everybody knows that halls in schools are very wide to accommodate the flow of foot traffic. Oh, Jesus.
Who do you think I was?
April Fools.
April Fools. can't remember what they said too about the whole April Fool's Day ends at noon thing, but I know that they mention it, and I think that they made it up for the movie, because that's not a thing.
I set this whole thing up just to waste your time. Satisfied?
Come on, I'm leaving.
I'm with you, Carol.
Yeah, this place gives me the creeps.
Let's go find our old classrooms.
Go find our old classrooms. Why? What? So you can stand there and fantasize about a history class?
Looks like Halloween.
I wasn't even talking to you. What the fuck? Well, then shut up. See, I told you things were going to go wrong. Okay, thank you. And the phone is on silent, by the way. See? No, I lost my train of thought. Oh, and the thing too about the lockers aren't made that way. Where, first of all, lockers aren't detachable. They're all in one combined unit that are separated. They're not, separate pieces like Jenga fucking blocks or whatever. So there's that, and especially these tall lockers that they have, and so you mean to tell me in the 5 years since they left school, no other kids had been assigned their lockers? That doesn't make sense. And what else was I about to say? The fact that Marty brought the lockers to the very, very small room where the festivities were supposed to take place. Why couldn't it be the gym? Because a gym is where everything happens in these movies. The gym is always where the prom happens. The gym is always where the big dance happens. It's always the gym. And they have one, because they have that scene. And I would think that it would be very easy. She found her blouse? She lost her blouse on prom night.
My calculator.
A calculator? Really? All this shit?
You only just noticed it? What the hell are these doing here? They yours?
And if you're gonna go with the whole dream element, this is an oddly specific dream. And also, if you're gonna go with the dream twist, I guess. When is it supposed to be taking place? Was it supposed to be immediately after the accident? So we're really going from Marty being burned and disfigured in the accident in the chemistry lab to Marty being hospitalized for however long and undergoing skin grafts. That's just my assessment. Marty's yearbook, how convenient.
Guess the little sucker never got it.
Speaking of Marty too, there's also another thing that doesn't make any sense. Like so much of this movie. This movie makes the room... No, I'm not even going to No, because I don't think The Room has any redeeming qualities whatsoever. I don't understand the fandom and the cult following behind it, because it's not even funny to me. It's just boring. And but then again, I've always watched it, or the couple of times I tried to watch it, it was on my own, and I couldn't get through the first 20 minutes. But I think I already spoke about The Room, so I'm gonna change the subject. Oh, that was quite clearly a fucking fake out right there. But what I was gonna say was the scene where I can't remember which one of the girls it is right now, but one of the girls is walking down the hallway and she sees the very large, like, door frame sized photograph that's clearly a photograph, by the way, of Marty, and I think he's holding a football. And as she approaches, Marty, is that you? And then of course the hands burst through. Where would they get that, or why would they get that? Why would they have a full-size door-sized picture or poster of Marty, or where would he even get one? Again, I'm looking at this like it's not a dream, because I don't buy it. I think it was an afterthought.
Jesus, 11:30. Time flies when you're high, man.
When the final moments of the film where Marty rips off the skin graft and he's staring directly into the camera, those final seconds before the credits roll, it always what I always think of, and this is not even a movie that I particularly enjoy or have seen very many times. I only seen it the one time, but it always reminds me of the final moments in Funny Games. At least the American version. I've never seen the original version. But in Funny Games, you know, I believe it's the older kid who begins the whole manipulation and shit between the couple and the family. But when I believe he goes to the house to borrow an egg, and after he goes to in the final moments of the film, he goes to another house, and I believe he asks again, you know, to the new people, do you think I could borrow an egg? And as the woman goes to get it, it's like he looks at the camera and it kind of freezes, and he just like kind of smiles devilishly, and that look on his face just always reminded me of Marty in those last moments of the movie.
Now don't you get smart with me, boy. I know you from somewhere.
Yeah, sure, you remember me. Skip Pollard.
This depiction of the janitor, I hate to say it, but is quite racially insensitive. And the fact that they made him a drunk too.
And I thought I was one hell of a guy.
Well, you ain't changed much. By the way, they're knocking down this whole place here next month. So if you want to have a last look around, that's all right by me.
So they're knocking down the building next month too. See, that's another thing. If this is a dream, these are very, very specific things, because dreams are not streamlined. You know, I mean, dreams are not stories that are told from point A to B to C. Dreams are inconsistent, much like this movie. But dreams are inconsistent, and they don't have real specific imagery or even you don't really have a very detailed experience when you're having a dream, because everything is in a fog. So this is why I never, first of all, everything was a dream is like one of the biggest fucking cop-outs that you can do, unless something was written in like the 1700s or in Shakespearean era England. You can't do that. It's just like you can't begin a book or a story with Once Upon a Time, even if you're doing it ironically. Just don't do it.
See this quarter? All you gotta do is drop it off your head into this funnel. Twice.
You gotta be kidding.
It's not as easy as it looks.
A lot of people say when it comes to writing, either short stories or novels or screenplays or whatever. Well, no, I can't say that with screenplays, because screenplays there are some rules, and I'm not going to lapse into Randy with a whole spiel about there are certain rules that one must abide by. Blah, 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 blah. But there are, if you study screenwriting, there are certain rules that if you want your script to work, you have to follow. What I always liked about writing novels and short stories, and why I write them, is because it's a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want. And some people will enjoy it, some people will appreciate it, and some people won't. But those who don't or won't, you're not writing the story for them anyway. So, and when you have a movie or a book or a story that has a big twist, it has to make sense. And just saying, oh, it was all a dream, it was all a drug-induced dream that Marty experienced in the hospital. No, I'm not buying that. And I'm having vocal fry here because I can't find the fucking water. And if I push things around, I'm either going to... I think there's the infamous stomach explosion. If I push things around, I'm going to either fuck up the recording or I'll make a lot of noise. Let me see what I can do, because I don't like the way I sound. Oh, here it is. Another thing that I think everybody has an issue with is the girl, the actress here, who gets the blood splatter on her. And the first thing she does is go to take a bath in a tub that shouldn't be in a high school. But then you get the question, the big question, which is, once the acid starts to fill the tub and you're being burned alive and your skin is falling off, I think it's time to get out. But she just stays
Is she all right?
indoors.
She'll be okay.
Okay.
You ain't gonna get me back up there. No way.
Right, well, we stick together. There's gotta be a way out.
That's another thing too. The way, again, if you're going to put the whole dream element into play here, and you're going to accept it, dreams are not like movies where you can, you know, check in on other characters and see what they're doing or where they're going or what their plan is. That's not the way dreams work. Dreams are generally from your own perspective, either you're you or you're someone else. That's just the way it is. Everything looks fine here with the water. Okay, she didn't fill it up too much. I hear leaky pipes. This girl doesn't have a lot of lines either, I don't think. I think that she was cast just to get naked and die violently.
Here, she always starts first time. Just get in and drive like hell.
Oh, Caroline, I love you, but that was really bad. And again, putting the dream thing aside for a second here, and let's just assume that this is really happening. There are so many things that it would be impossible for Marty to do. And for him not to be seen by the other people, by the ensemble of characters who tormented him. Generally, in movies like this, when it's a teenager who is getting revenge on his tormentors, the tormentors are mostly male, I think. And I think the women were brought in just to...
I thought you said she started every time.
Every time except now.
Oh God, Caroline, that's so bad. She owns it, you know, she doesn't have any regrets about making this movie. I think she's proud of it. I think she's proud of her performance. Good for her. And I'm not saying that facetiously, but you know, if I was in, I would have been too young, but if I was in a slasher movie during this time, well, but this time, not this time specifically, because this is when the wave of slashers were starting to fizzle. It was starting to fizzle out because everybody had done everything. She's still in the fucking tub. Come on. Things had started to fizzle out. But if I was in a slasher movie from like the early 80s, and you're like talking about 80, 81, 82, I would be so... I'd be so proud, even if I wasn't in a good one, because it's a time in cinematic history that is spoken about lovingly, even though at the time of the movies being the release of the films, they were not received favorably by film critics, generally Siskel and Ebert, who basically hate everything that isn't pretentious or hated, because they're both dead now. But there is too this, and I was surprised in what I was able to find on Wikipedia, that this got a pretty favorable review in Variety at the time. I don't know if I ever told this story, but I want to tell it anyway. And it's not my story to tell, so forgive me if I'm telling it wrong. But I don't want to say who said it. But I heard it on a podcast. It was a movie podcast that generally dealt with reviews and news in the genre. This was a few years ago. I don't even think I was doing B Movie Bonanza when I heard it, so I think that it's safe to say that I didn't tell the story before. But the host, before he... I don't know if I want to say... Okay, he writes for TV. He is a creator and a producer and a writer for TV. And I think before that he had a column for movie reviews. I could totally just be pulling that out of my ass, but that's the way I remember it. This was a few years ago, and I haven't listened to that episode of the podcast since. But he said that he was at a screening for a very pompous and pretentious and boring film, you know, something that was Oscar gold, and he was in his seat trying to watch the movie, trying to get rid of it, because I think he had to write a column on it of his own. And there was a row or two up from him, a movie critic who it was unmistakable not to recognize him. And when you say something like that, it makes me think of one person whose name I'm not going to say, but it makes me think of one person who is a film critic and has a very recognizable look. It probably wasn't him, but whatever. Anyway, about not very far into the movie, this reviewer, this very famous and well-respected film reviewer who had a column with a large following and a very broad had very broad exposure among readers online and in print, I believe at the time, was obviously not very fond of the movie. And we know this because he fell asleep not long into it. And we're not just talking about nodding off. We're talking about his head went back. His mouth was open. He was snoring loudly. He had no idea what was going on. Yet, he went home and wrote a glowing article of the film that was released online. Here's that part that I was talking about with the poster, I think. He wrote a very favorable review for this movie, and it was released the next day. And like I said, it was glowing. And I think that he only wrote this review because it was expected of him, or he was being paid to do so.
Susan, she's out there. Isn't that her car? If Susan's out there, let's...
And I think that's really sad and pathetic, because there's an awful lot of politics in cinema.
Do, Frank? What
So.
the fuck are we gonna do? Joe said he saw a tractor.
And
When you came in?
as I've so often said,
A tractor?
most critics would rather gnaw their own foot off than admit a horror movie is any good. Especially if it's a low-budget horror movie. The Blair Witch Project is the rare exception to the rule. But if it's a low-budget horror movie that doesn't have a wide mainstream release, that isn't distributed by a major studio, you're not going to get a good review. You're not even going to get your movie seen. So you have to rely on websites like Dread Central and Joe Blow and things like that.
And yes, about half a gallon. Well, how far is that gonna get us?
But the industry keeps changing, you know.
Just wanna cut grass.
It's kind of crazy.
Open those doors, and everybody will look after their own ass, all right?
Anything we can do? No. Just let me,
I was wrestling while I was talking and while I was listening to the movie. I was wrestling with how I think the movie should end. Because like I said so many times, I don't like the "this is all a dream." I don't like the zombie factor either because it's so fucking out of place. You can't have zombies show up in a slasher movie. It just doesn't work. Does it make sense? And I know it's a dream. All roads lead back to, but it's all a dream. Okay, fine, whatever. But it still doesn't work for me. And and by the way, too, like I said before, you know, Marty had a lot of still harbored a lot of ill will against those who tormented him when he was in high school, and you can only assume that when he gets out of the hospital bed and he starts ripping off the skin grafts, that since none of this actually happened, he's going off to make it really happen. Being horribly disfigured is a pretty good reason for suspense. But there was... Oh, popcorn. There are movies that, you know, you see people getting revenge and for crimes committed by fellow students who were just bullies who didn't know any better, you know. Some of them are sociopaths, some of them are exceptionally cruel, but there will always be bullies in school. No matter how many zero tolerance policies high schools and middle schools and elementary schools have, there will always be kids who aren't nice and who will take a tremendous amount of pleasure in making the lives of other kids miserable. It's just the way it is. And in real life, you can't go taking revenge on all these people. I had been bullied in middle school by kids, and you know, I thought it was the worst thing in the world. But once you get older, you forget about it. You know, you realize that it's small potatoes. But Popcorn is one of the few movies that and I've seen it many times. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's not a popular movie. I did a commentary for it in B Movie Bonanza, and I probably will bring it back from the archives. But Popcorn is one of those movies where when you find out who the killer is, it's a whodunit, and you find out why he's doing this and what he has been through since the trauma that led to the night where he exacts his revenge, and he tells his story. It's like, okay, all right, I get it. I can see why you would want revenge. and you would want to make other people suffer because of the way your life changed so dramatically after that night. So I can totally buy it.
Lay off, will ya?
Marty too. I can buy it to a degree, but it's so silly, you know. And plus, he had skin grafts. He was getting better, and I think the nurse even says that they took that the skin grafts took, and he was going to be okay. Speaking of skin grafts, I learned something very interesting the other day, and I learned this, I believe, on the Howard Stern show. But it was from, I believe was it Howard Stern or was it something else? I think it might have been Howard, and it came from Robin, so it's, you know, she's a reliable source. But I heard that when boys are circumcised, if the skin, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I don't know exactly how it works. I believe you put it in a petri dish and put some stem cells, I don't know. But if you have that skin, that little bit of skin that is excised when you do the circumcision, that little tiny bit of skin can grow to be the length of 4 football fields. And do you know how many people that can help, who have been disfigured, who have been in fires, who have been in wars, who have fought overseas? It's science is just an incredible thing, and it keeps expanding. So there's my 2 cents on that. And skin grafts, especially in the 80s when Marty had them, those that worked didn't really work all that well. You still have a lot of scar tissue, and I don't want to talk about this because this is a very scary subject for me. I'm petrified of fires. But, generally you can't.
You filthy, stinking bastard, Marty! What do you want from us?
You can never go back to who you were. And it's a frightening thing. It's a terrifying thing. Come out and show yourself. Yeah, that line's never been used in a horror movie before. I'll get you for this. That's another one. I think he's American, this guy, because usually if you're an actor who is, unless you're a very seasoned actor, and I don't think he is, at least not at this point in his career, but when you're an actor who is from a different region and you're trying to do the dialect, if you're like an English actor trying to do an American accent, when you get very emotional, particularly when you're yelling or very angry, your accent comes out. And I try to hide it. I try to hide my South Philly accent. People generally tell me that when they talk to me, they don't hear an accent. I don't buy that. I work on it. I try to say certain things differently. I try to be cognizant of it. I try to say talk instead of talk, or water instead of water.
What do we do now?
Coffee instead of coffee. coffee isn't that bad.
Sooner or later. All we do is put our backs to the
I don't
wall
think.
and wait for it.
But when I get upset and I start yelling, which I try not to do, and I try to do
Marty
as
won't hurt us after midday, I'm sure of it.
little as possible, because I'm not an angry guy, even though I've been dealt some fucked up shit in this life. But I try
If you hadn't taken Marty into the shower,
not to spend a lot of time yelling.
It's you too he's after, nobody else. Stella, Frank, Joe, none of them should have died. It should have been you too.
Oh, Stella died already.
Come on, we'll get out of here. We will.
Stella was the ditzy blonde with the boa, I believe. The one who decided to have sex with somebody else like 15 minutes after her husband died. In a bed, in a very large bed. And I don't care. No. You can say as much as you want that, okay, yeah, bathtubs. You can find bathtubs in schools in the United Kingdom. It's not that uncommon. You're not gonna find a fucking king-size bed that's fully made up. No. Mm-mm. I think when we get to this point in the film, things start to drag a little bit. It's amazing that... Oh. I like that little jangle of the bells. The jingle jangle.
Where's Skip? I don't know. Fell asleep. I'm gonna look for him. No! It's safer here.
I think she's English, this
It's past
girl.
11. So? April Fool's ends at noon.
April
We can
Fool's
last
ends
out
at
one
noon.
more hour. We're safe.
No, I don't think it does.
Marty sticks
So,
to the rules
you
so
mean
far.
it's a
We gotta
12-hour
Skip. You
period
gonna come?
from
You're not getting me out there, no
midnight
way.
until noon to play your pranks? That doesn't make any sense. And I keep saying that doesn't make any sense, but so little of this movie actually does make sense.
Hey, wait for me.
I don't know. Either she's English or she has a very unusual voice or accent. I think she's English, this girl. Oh. This, with the exception of certain cues, like that spring sound and the jingle of the bells, in particular this sound and not that. Well, maybe that, but it echoes Harry Manfredini's. Well, you can definitely tell it's Harry Manfredini because of his style. But to me, a lot of the sound, a lot of the score in this film sounds very much like it's from Friday Part 5. So they weren't all the same, but they were all very similar. And not that I'm knocking Harry Manfredini as a composer. He was obviously very accomplished and respected, and
I never meant to hurt Marty. Please, let me go home. Please, let me go home. Shut up.
oof.
Find Skip.
What was I saying? Yeah, people love Harry Manfredini, but you know, there are composers out there who do film scores, and when you go from one film to another, it's like apples and oranges. And I made this point before with the movie Lisa, whose score was composed by Joe Renzetti, who did the score for both Frankenhooker and Basket Case 2. And you would never, ever, ever think that it's by the same person, because not only is the composition totally different, but he used different equipment. So you can't keep doing the same thing. So much of this movie that I forget. Marty's yearbook, come on. That's another set piece too. That. Okay, you think he's going to get you next, so the logical thing to do is to just go into full hysterics and run. I always balked at people who say that characters in horror movies, especially slasher movies, are very stupid and they do the dumbest things. This is a nasty kill in the I believe it's the cesspool. But I've never been in this kind of position before. I've never been stalked by a slasher. But I would assume that it's not a very, it's not, this is a, but, I mean, he only kicks her down. Can't she climb back up after he walks away? In fact, he puts, and okay, first of all, he puts a brand spanking new, I'm pretty sure those are Adidas unless they're knockoffs, but he puts a brand spanking new sneaker on her head, so you know they bought those sneakers purposely for this scene, so he wouldn't have to put some nasty ass sneakers that have bacteria and dog shit and gum all over the soles. But I completely forgot where I was going before. Oh yeah, people saying that, or critics, generally people who don't like horror movies in general, always say that the characters are so stupid. But I've never been in this situation where I was being stalked by a slasher. But I would assume that you're not exactly in a decent frame of mind. You're not thinking clearly. You're not making a plan. You're just acting purely on impulse, and you're in that fight or flight moment. So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that you're not going to make good decisions, and you're going to make you're going to make bad decisions that will ultimately get you killed. And this is something that I've always said in defense of these movies, because of course I'm going to defend them no matter how bad they are. But if you make a horror movie where all of the characters, the character ensemble was built of like rocket scientists, guess what? The movie would be over within a span of 2 minutes at most. So you have to have real people. You have to have real people who the audience can relate to, and a lot of times there are cookie cutter characters. Like for example, in Friday the 13th, as much as I love the series, there generally are always cookie cutter characters. You gotta make sure you got the prankster, you got the slut, you got the intellectual, you got the jock, you got the characters who are very amorous most of the time. Those all became tropes over this decade. I'm gonna write a fucking thesis. Because I think I don't know as much as I do, and I know that there are people out there listening. Well, probably not. But there are people out there listening. Those of you who are listening, are like, what? No, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I completely, because I'm so tired right now. It's in the middle of the night, and I wanted to do this so that I could exert my strength a little bit. I could use my brain, and because I did so with another commentary, can't remember which one, but it was pretty recently, and the Tylenol PM had kicked in during the movie, so I was dragging ass until the end. And when I went to sleep, I slept like the dead, which is very unusual for me. Incredibly unusual for me. I haven't had a good night's sleep until I was probably 15. Since I was probably 15. Okay, so we're going to have a chase scene that goes on and on and on and on and on. And I don't mind a good chase scene, but sometimes, especially when you're in my position and you're visually impaired and you're only listening to the movie as opposed to seeing it, you want to, you want to get the ball rolling. Okay, so I'm listening to this on my iPod. Yeah, I own an iPod Touch that is 11, going on 11 years old, but it still works. And I say that now, and tomorrow it's going to break. My ass is completely numb. But that's the way it's gonna be. That's the main sacrifice I have to make, is I can't really move a lot because this microphone picks up so much sound. Especially when the wires are moving. It picks up everything. And I'm trying to be professional here, even though I've said 10,000 fucking times that I'm not a professional. I'm just doing this for fun. I'm not even monetizing. At least not yet. We'll see how it goes in the future. That heavy breathing is reminiscent of Jason, I think. I will say this, though, that I do think that not only the mask, I love the mask, but his wardrobe was a very interesting choice. And I mean that in a positive way, because, especially with the Letterman's jacket, because Marty was not somebody who would be wearing a Letterman's jacket in high school. He would not be playing any sport of any kind, and he would not be varsity. So it's like in his revenge plot, not only is he getting back at those who tormented him, but he's putting himself in a place where he always wished he could be. And there's that jingle jangle of the bells. That one doesn't really sound like the bells. That one sounds like that one sounds like the glass wind chimes that I used to have outside my bedroom window that used to always show up or appear in the commentaries that I did during B-Movie Bonanza. And it was interesting because when I would listen back to the episode, I would hear it, but I always thought it was coming from outside the window. I didn't realize that it was being picked up. So she just pushed him over out of the window. Now, that would have killed anybody. I will say this though, I do think it's interesting that they kill off the final girl. That is rare in these movies. And when I give I've given so many criticisms about this movie. Oh shit! And one would assume that listening to them and my picking apart so much that I don't like the movie, and that's simply not true. I do like it in quite a bit, and I think it's an essential slasher movie that one should experience at least once if you want to broaden your knowledge on the genre during the decade when it was at its peak. But it's got so many flaws. I believe that Caroline had said something about wishing she'd had some of the wardrobe that she wore in this movie because her daughters would have appreciated having it. She could run. Okay, he does a pretty good demented killer here, especially that laugh is pretty creepy. Oh, I forgot to mention. Fucking fool, you motherfucker. I'm not sure if I would end it here, but anyway, I was saying in the beginning that since it was released it was filmed in 1984, Simon committed suicide shortly after the film wrapped, so he never got to see I don't think he ever got to see the finished product, and he certainly didn't get to see its release. By the way, an interesting little nugget of trivia about Slaughter High. I think I mentioned this before, but in some regions or some countries, a lot of countries like to link movies together that have nothing to do with each other and make them sequels. I can't give an example right now other than the one that I'm about to, but Cutting Class, the slasher movie with Brad Pitt and Jill Schoelen and Donovan Leitch, in some countries is known as Slaughter High 2. Which is it's completely different. The stories aren't even similar, except for the revenge aspect, but it's not even a bully getting his revenge, or a tormented teenager getting his revenge. The only thing the movies really have in common is that there's a high school, and that's about it. And now we're in the institution, where I still don't know how long he's been there.
You'll be able to take off the bandages in a couple of weeks.
She's clearly not American. Well, at least they got this right with the beeping of the machine after it had been tampered with. You see so many movies where people like pull out their IV, or they take off the whatever those electrodes, and the machine starts to beep or an alarm goes off, or it's supposed to, but nothing happens. Okay, so we're out of the supposed dream, and was that supposed to be a demonic voice, an otherworldly voice, a demon voice, or was it just slowed down? I don't know. That must be very, very painful to be pulling those skin grafts off. And I don't understand exactly why he did it. And the only conclusion that I could come to is that he didn't want to be repaired, so to speak. I say that like he's a car. He didn't want the skin grafts. He didn't want the surgery. I think, because he's leaving the hospital now in those final moments, and just before so he takes the skin grafts off, or the skin off, the new skin, and my only guess is that he is going after his bullies for real, and he wants them to see what they did to him. But that's just me. Anyway, so that was Slaughter High. I can't believe I made it through with only minimal issues. The fucking phone being one of them. And not being able to hit the water. But other than that, I think it went okay. So, yeah. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave some comments. Yeah, and until next time, this is Brandon Ford signing off. Unpleasant dreams.